I'd like to call up Brother Muhammad Taqi for the recitation of the Holy Quran. Please welcome him with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
لحب إمام أبا عبد الله الحسين صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. ثانيا لحب سيدة النساء فاطمة الزهراء سلام الله عليها. والثالث بأعلى أصواتكم لتعجيل مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان. الله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لا أقسم بيوم القيامة ولا أقسم بالنفس اللوامة. أيحسب الإنسان أن لن نجمع عظامه بلى قادرين على أن نسوي بنانه بل يريد الإنسان ليفجر أمامه يسأل أيان يوم القيامة فإذا برق البصر وخسف القمر وجمع الشمس والقمر يقول الإنسان يومئذ أين المفر كلا لا وزر إلى ربك يومئذ المستقر ينبأ الإنسان يومئذ بما قدم وأخر بل الإنسان على نفسه بصيرة ولو ألقى معاذيره لا تحرك به لسانك لتعجل به إن علينا جمعه وقرآنه فإذا قرأناه فاتبع قرآنه ثم إن علينا بيانه لا تحرك به لسانك لتعجل به إن علينا جمعه وقرآنه فإذا قرأناه فاتبع قرآنه ثم إن علينا بيانه كلا بل تحبون العاجلة وتذرون الآخرة وجوه يومئذ ناظرة إلى ربها ناظرة ووجوه يومئذ باسرة تظن أن يفعل بها فاقرة كلا إذا بلغت التراقي وقيل من راق وظن أنه الفراق والتفت الساق بالساق إلى ربك يومئذ المساق. كلا إذا بلغت التراقي. كلا إذا بلغت التراقي وقيل من راق وظن أنه الفراق والتفت الساق بالساق إلى ربك يومئذ المساق. فلا صدق ولا صلى. فلا صدق ولا صلى ولكن كذب وتولى. ثم ذهب إلى أهله يتمطى. أولى لك فأولى ثم أولى لك فأولى. أيحسب الإنسان أن يترك سدى. ألم يك نطفة من مني يمنى ثم كان علقة فخلق فسوى. ثم كان علقة فخلق فسوى فجعل منه الزوجين الذكر والأنثى. أليس ذلك بقادر أليس ذلك بقادر أليس ذلك بقادر أليس ذلك بقادر على أن يحيي الموتى. أيحسب الإنسان أن يترك سدى ألم يكن نطفة من مني يمنى ثم كان علقة فخلق فسوى فجعل منه الزوجين الذكر والأنثى أليس ذلك بقادر أليس ذلك بقادر أليس ذلك بقادر على أن يحيي الموتى صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أزور سيدي ومولاي ومعتمدي ورجائي ذخري وذخيرتي في آخرتي ودنياي الإمام الحسين صالة عن نفسي ونيابة عن والدي ووالدي والدي وعن جميع المؤمنين والمؤمنات قربة إلى الله تعالى. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله. السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين وابن سيد الوصين. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور. السلام عليك وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار. يا أبا عبد الله لقد عظمت الرزية وجلت وعظمت المصيبة بك علينا وعلى جميع أهل الإسلام، وجلت وعظمت مصيبتك في السماوات على جميع أهل السماوات. فلعن الله أمة أسست أساس الظلم والجور عليكم أهل البيت، ولعن الله أمة دفعتكم عن مقامكم وأزالتكم عن مراتبكم التي رتبكم الله فيها، ولعن الله أمة قتلتكم، ولعن الله الممهدين لهم بالتمكين من قتالكم. برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم ومن أشياعهم وأتباعهم وأوليائهم. يا أبا عبد الله إني سلم لمن سالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم إلى يوم القيامة. ولعن الله آل زياد وآل مروان، ولعن الله بني أمية قاطبة، ولعن الله ابن مرجان، ولعن الله عمر بن سعد، ولعن الله شمر، ولعن الله أمة أسرجت وألجمت وتنقبت لقتالك بأبي أنت وأمي. لقد عظم مصابي بك فأسأل الله الذي أكرم مقامك وأكرمني بك أن يرزقني طلب ثورك مع إمام منصور من أهل بيت محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم اجعلني عندك وجيا بالحسين عليه السلام في الدنيا والآخرة. يا أبا عبد الله إني أتقرب إلى الله وإلى رسوله وإلى أمير المؤمنين وإلى فاطمة وإلى الحسن وإليك بموالاتك وبالبراءة ممن قاتلك ونصب لك الحرب، وبالبراءة ممن أسس أساس الظلم والجور عليكم، وأبرأ إلى الله وإلى رسوله ممن أسس أساس ذلك وبنى عليه بنيانه وجرى في ظلمه وجوره عليكم وعلى أشيائكم. برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم وأتقرب إلى الله ثم إليكم بموالاتكم وموالاة وليكم وبالبراءة من أعدائكم والناصبين لكم الحرب وبالبراءة من أشياعهم وأتباعهم. إني سلم لمن سالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم وولي لمن والاكم وعدو لمن عاداكم. فأسأل الله الذي يكرمني بمعرفتكم ومعرفة أوليائكم ورزقني البراءة من أعدائكم من يجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة، وأن يثبت لي عندكم قدم صدق في الدنيا والآخرة، وأسأله أن يبلغني المقام المحمود لكم عند الله، وأن يرزقني طلب ثاركم مع إمام ودين ظاهر ناطق بالحق منكم، وأسأل الله بحقكم وبالشأن الذي لكم عنده أن يعطيني بمصابكم أفضل ما يعطي مصابا مصيبة ما أعظمها وأعظم رزيتها في الإسلام وفي جميع السماوات والأرض. اللهم اجعلني في مقامي هذا ممن تنال منك صلوات ورحمة ومغفرة. اللهم اجعل محياي محيا محمد وآل محمد، ومماتي ممات محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إن هذا يوم تبركت به بنو أمية وابن آكلة الأكباد، اللعين ابن اللعين على لسانك ولسان نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله، في كل موطن وموقف وقف فيه نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم لعن أبا سفيان ومعاوية ويزيد بن معاوية، عليهم منك اللعنة وبد العابدين. وهذا يوم فرحت به آل زياد وآل مروان بقتلهم الحسين صلوات الله عليه. اللهم فضاعف عليهم اللعنة منك والعذاب الأليم. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك في هذا اليوم وفي موقفي هذا وأيام حياتي بالبراءة منهم واللعنة عليهم، وبالموالاة لنبيك وآل نبيك عليه وعليهم السلام. اللهم لعن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد، وآخر تابعا له على ذلك. اللهم لعن العصابة التي جادت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله، اللهم لعنهم جميعا. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت مفناك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت، وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. اللهم خص أنت أول ظالم باللعن مني، وابدأ به أولا ثم العن الثانية والثالثة والرابعة. اللهم لعن يزيد خامسا، ولعن عبيد الله بن زياد وابن مرجانة وعمر بن سعد وشمرة وآل أبي سفيان وآل زياد وآل مروان إلى يوم القيامة. سجود. اللهم لك الحمد حمد الشاكرين لك على مصابهم، الحمد لله على عظيم رزيتي. اللهم ارزقني شفاعة الحسين يوم الورود، وثبت لي قدم صدق عندك مع الحسين وأصحاب الحسين الذين بذلوا مهجهم دون الحسين عليه السلام. أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد.
Just a quick couple of announcements before the Sayyid gets up. A reminder, the 10th of Muharram, being the day of Ashura, will be held in this hall on Tuesday, the 9th of August at 10:30 in the morning. 10:30 sharp, the Sayyid inshallah will begin, so just keep that date in mind. For the remaining 2 nights after the 9th of August, because we finish on the 11th of August, we've decided to do a Q&A with the Sayyid. So inshallah, people will put their questions together, we'll put them in a basket, and we'll just pull them out randomly. So any questions you have, the remaining 2 nights after his lecture, that's what will be happening. And there won't be any latmiyyah, it's just going to be Q&A. That's that. 2 more announcements. If anyone would like to contribute in any way, the baskets are on the entry of the doors, so we won't be sending the basket around. They're on the entry and exit of the door. If anyone would like to contribute, more than welcome. And the last announcement, in regards to the project, Ya Li Tharat Al-Hussein, for those that haven't been here, we're just looking for 100 individuals to contribute towards programs as such as what we've established here over the past several nights for future programs under the guided. So inshallah, brothers and sisters will send around a notepad. If you've already signed up, thank you very much. If you haven't and you'd like to, then please just register your name and you'll be contacted. That's it from my end. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. اللهم وهب لنا رأفته ورحمته وعونه ودعاءه وخيره ورضاه ما ننال به سعة من رحمتك وفوزا عندك يا كريم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. For the hastening of the reappearance of the Master, the Savior, the Avenger, Al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan al-Askari, recite aloud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. قال الله العظيم في محكم كتابه الكريم: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. أفحسبتم أنما خلقناكم عبثا وأنكم إلينا لا ترجعون. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. The strategies employed by falsehood, the forces of evil, to attack and target goodness, virtue, morality, faith in God, submission to the Creator, they are numerous and they come in all kinds of different manners, approaches. As a believer living in an open world that is simultaneously open and yet somehow mysterious and closed and dark, you need to be aware of these strategies. Because as the commander of the faithful tells us, مَنْ نَامَ لَمْ يُنَمْ عَنْهُ, the enemy is wide awake, plotting, scheming, while we are in a deep slumber. We're asleep, completely oblivious to the dangers that lurk around us, that are attempting to take away the most precious possession of ours, our faith in God, our submission to His will. And if we don't familiarize ourselves with these strategies, with these tactics, with these schemes and plots, we will be the first victims to them. Now, as I said, there are many, many strategies employed, many means with which our faith and our values are targeted, but I want to focus on three tonight. And I want to present to you one of the biggest dangers facing morality in this day and age and for years to come, which is the gaming industry. But before I talk about that, I'll present you with this introduction. The three strategies that are used to undermine and undercut our belief in God. Number one, direct confrontation. Now, if the enemy possesses military prowess that is superior to ours, if the enemy has the financial support that they need to weaken and undermine us, then they have used this strategy and they will continue to use it well into the future. What is direct confrontation? It is when they destroy the shrine of Imam al-Hussein. It is when they demolish the sacred mausoleums of the Ahlul Bayt in Baqi'. It is when they attack the pilgrims of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. This is direct confrontation. It is when they use intimidation tactics to prevent people from gathering in honor of Imam al-Hussein, like they do in some so-called Muslim countries, where for a Shia to enter a majlis of Imam al-Hussein, they have to scan their residency card at the gate, at the door. Can you imagine the fear? Can you imagine the intimidation? That this person, for them to simply sit in a gathering where Imam al-Hussein is eulogized, they know that their names are now flagged. They know that when the time comes for this person to be thrown out of the country, they already have their names, they have their movement records, they know what they've done, they know where they've been. This is direct confrontation. Now the problem with this first strategy is that it almost never works. It never yields any of the desired results for the forces of evil. Why? It's simple. Because when you confront someone and try to intimidate them and try to subdue them, the common reaction is to hold on to your faith and your values even more firmly. When I find that my faith, that my religiosity, that my community is under attack militarily, what do? I respond in kind. I'll try to defend my honor, my values. And so direct confrontation has been used to its maximum extent. Rivers of blood have been shed so that the name of Hussein remains vibrant and alive. It's been used, but it never works. The reason or the proof is all of you here tonight. The fact that we have almost 500 million people who proudly proclaim that they are followers of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. People who reside in every corner of this globe. People who hold gatherings in remembrance and commemoration of Imam al-Hussein everywhere, including in the North Pole inside igloos. People who don't care what happens to them. Even if they get killed, even if they have to lose their family members, they'll still do it. Because direct confrontation always provokes a negative reaction. So this is the first strategy. The second strategy is to sow seeds of doubt in the hearts and minds of the adherents of this faith. And this is commonly used by Wahhabis in conjunction with the previous strategy. They'll try to convince you that the tragedy of Karbala didn't go down the way it's described by historians and scholars and by speakers on the pulpit. They'll say things like, how do you know these are not all exaggerations? How do you know? I mean, who would kill a 6-month-old infant anyway? Things like these, questions. Who says this and who says that? Where did we even get the narrative of Ashura from? Is it authentic? Is it accurate? Because surely a historical event that took place 14 centuries ago must be subject to some misinterpretation, to some tampering, right? This is used by Wahhabis and their ilk and their allies, including some people within our faith, including people who claim to be Shia. Which is why any believer, for them to withstand this particular strategy, this tactic, their faith needs to be grounded in knowledge. You need to have the answers to these questions. Questions like who says this, who says that are easy to make. They're easy to raise. But then for you to respond, you need to have solid evidence. You, as I've been saying all along, you can't be content with just 10 lectures a year. You need to have the knowledge. You need to have the know-how. You need to have the evidence. I remember once I said to a very good friend of mine, I said to him, I've been working on a series, this was I think about 2 years ago, called Why I Am a Shia. And I said to him, by the way, why are you a Shia? And he thought about it for a second and turned around and said, to be honest with you, I really don't know. I'm a Shia because my parents were Shia, which is an incredible blessing for which we have to be thankful until the day of judgment. Don't get me wrong. The fact that you had parents who led you into the majalis of Imam al-Hussein, who fed you the love of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, you need to kiss their feet for that. But we live in an age, my dear brothers and sisters, where that is just not good enough anymore. Why? Because there was a time when we lived in our villages where we didn't face all of the challenges that we're facing today. And so it was a lot easier to maintain your faith. You didn't have to be exposed to all of the falsehood out there. But today, we're sending our children to universities, to colleges, to communities. A lot of times we send our kids to another city, which is very common in the United States, for instance. A whole other city. They're completely disconnected from their parents, their family, their familiar environments, right? And when they're there, they're exposed to all kinds of spiritual contagions. They're exposed to all of these viruses that are not familiar to them. And then we expect them to hold on to their faith. How? How? Throw someone in a virus-infested and contaminated environment and expect them to be healthy. How? If you haven't already immunized them, if you haven't given them all the proofs at least to build a strong foundation. Where is our strong foundation? Do we know the basics of our religion? Do we know why we believe in God? Do we know why we believe in the prophethood of the Messenger of Allah, the Prophet of mercy, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam? Do we have all the evidence to back up our belief in the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt? What about the 12th Imam? Do we have the answers to all of the misconceptions out there? The answer, unfortunately, sadly, tragically, is that for the most part, most of us don't have the answers to those questions. So, when a doubt is introduced into the equation, when a misconception is thrown into our minds, suddenly it creates a crack in the dam. That window is no longer as pristine as it used to be. The fitrah is now contaminated. So we need to have these answers, right? I said to a group of wonderful brothers and sisters just the other night, I said there's a book by Ayatollah Sheikh Safi Gul Paigani which I've recommended from the pulpit many, many times, called, I'll give you the English name of the book, it's called Selected Narrations about the 12th Imam, or about the hidden Imam. Selected Narrations by Ayatollah Safi Gul Paigani. My recommendation is that groups of youth, when they get together, instead of squandering and wasting their time on vain and useless things, talking about completely useless things, read a couple of pages from this book every time you get together, and then discuss it, and then talk about it, right? Build a strong foundation, because the onslaught, the attacks that are coming left, right, and center are just too much. You don't have much of a force field around you. You don't have much of a shield around you to protect you from all of this. Maybe the first couple of questions will bounce off, but then when it gets to the more intricate stuff, suddenly the guy sends me an email. Just the other day, somebody sent me an email, Sayyid, I have a younger brother. He's such a wonderful guy. You know, it always starts off like that. Such a kind-hearted soul, such a beautiful human being. We sent him to college, and he was great. He used to go to majalis, he used to attend these gatherings, he used to even participate as a volunteer. We sent him to university. A year after that, he's an atheist now. What do we do? I went to meet a family right here in this city. A mother, a single mother, with 2 boys. One of them had left Tashayyu' and had become Wahhabi. The other had become an atheist. Subhanallah. And I had to deal with both of them. I had to talk to each of them in their own language, trying to address the misconceptions that led to them losing their way like this. And this is happening more often than you and I would like to acknowledge, brothers and sisters. So, the second strategy, the second tactic is misconceptions, doubts, scorched earth policy, but to a certain extent, even this is not very successful. Why? Because they can talk and talk and talk and talk, and then comes Muharram, and it washes all the filth away. Then comes Ashura, and a lot of these misconceptions that were relatively effective prior to the beginning of the season of mourning. But then when Muharram begins, when people start wearing black, when the streets and the houses, something that's so beautiful I've seen even here, is people decorating their houses, the outside, the facade of the house with black drapes in remembrance of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. When this begins, it changes people. And it washes away all the filth because it's the name of Hussein. So this doesn't always work either. But there is a third strategy, which is much, much more dangerous, which is now affecting so many of us. And I'd like to describe it as simply as distraction. It's the dissemination of the idea that life is vain, that we're here for a short period of time and we need to enjoy our time on this earth as much as we humanly can. You see, the first 2 strategies, they highlight the subject, which is the truth, Islam, Tawheed, Imam Hussein, Fatimatu Zahra. They try to attack that, and that doesn't work. So what they've utilized instead is to say, hey, look over there. There's something nice happening. And so your focus is shifted from what's under attack to something that's entertaining and nice and beautiful, which completely makes you forget what's important. Let me illustrate with a story. Last year, I was in the UK for Muharram. And someone said to me, my host said to me that there's a young man he'd like to talk to you. And very long story short, because the discussion went on for about a couple of hours, but this young man, I think he must have been about 16, 17 years old, maybe the average age of these wonderful souls in front of me tonight. He came, and among the things that he said was, look, I don't think God cares how I live my life. I said, so you believe in God? He said, yeah, I think there is compelling evidence that God does exist. I said, this God also created this universe. Obviously, that's the definition of God. He said, yeah, sure, I don't have a problem with that. But I don't think God cares enough about the details of how I lead my personal life. What I do in the morning, what I do in the afternoon, what I do when I go to bed, all these things. He shouldn't, because he's too great. He's too sublime. For him to be constantly watching over me and examining and analyzing my every move. I said, okay. It's a step in the right direction that you believe in God. But what you just said is something that's nothing short of sheer stupidity, and I'll explain why. I said, the same God that created a universe around us, where scientists have so far estimated the number of galaxies to be close to 2 trillion galaxies. So 2,000 billion galaxies. And that's only in the observable universe. In other words, there is a whole other part of the universe that is unobserved. We can never see it because of the speed of light and the limitations of the theory of relativity. We can never observe that part. But the part that we can potentially, theoretically see, 2 trillion galaxies. The average number of stars in every galaxy is 200 billion stars. Okay? This vast, seemingly endless cosmos works in absolute harmony and unicity and synchronicity, such that it allows us to live on this pale blue planet, this tiny dot, which can't be seen when you zoom out outside of the solar system, let alone the Milky Way galaxy, let alone the local cluster, let alone the observable universe. You can't even see our planet, okay? But somehow, in the midst of all of that, you and I can walk around, travel from place to place, and not be bombarded with celestial objects and comets and asteroids and stars and planets and other galaxies colliding with us. Somehow, it works like a symphony, so beautifully, so intricately. That's at the level of the universe. Now come down to your body. You have within your body, I said, 60,000 miles of blood vessels and veins. 60,000. If you line them up all together, all of your veins, all of your blood vessels, they're longer than circling around Earth twice. And that's just in one human being. Look at the harmony, look at the beauty of it all. God cared, listen carefully, God cared enough about your physical health to that extent, and He doesn't care about your spiritual health. He doesn't care about the things that may be detrimental to your spirit, to your soul, the sins that you might commit which would hurt no one else but you. He doesn't care. I gave him another example. I said the government, which is not some supernatural entity, the government that's comprised of a bunch of people just like you, cares about how fast you drive in your own street. And they'll put signs saying that you can't drive faster than 40 miles or 50 miles. This is a school zone, you have to slow down. It cares about how hard you hit the pedal in your car, right? The government also cares about the most personal of things in your life. For example, if you don't send your kids to school, the government has a say in that. The government will call you. Some official will give you a phone call and say, "Where are your kids?" You can't say, "They're my kids, what's it to you?" No. As a government, they have a say in whether your kids stay at home or go to school. And when they go to school, then they have all the say on what your kids are taught. They literally prescribe what your children are taught. What happens as part of their education. The government chooses that. The government cares enough, but not your Creator, not God. خالق السماوات والأرض. Where does this mindset come from? This idea that I can just lead my life the way I want. I want to have fun. I want to play games. I just want to be left alone. Just leave me alone. This leave me alone mentality, where does it come from? It comes from the philosophy known as existential nihilism. Sounds like a big word, but basically what it means is that this world was created without a purpose, without any aim or objective. If there is a purpose in this world, in my life, then it is absolute hedonism, Euclidean to the core, meaning that the purpose of life here is to attract as much pleasure and repel and avoid as much pain as humanly possible. And you'd think that this is a philosophy that's exclusive to, say, I don't know, atheists. But the reality in our own lives, that's the aim that we, most of us at least, we try to head in the direction. It's to have as much fun as possible. Now, enter the gaming industry. The gaming industry today, brothers and sisters, I'll start off with some stats, hopefully to sober you up. The gaming industry today is bigger than the music industry as well as the film industry combined. It's worth about $200 billion globally. And they say that in the year 2027, it'll approach about $400 billion. So it's doubling every 3 years, every 4 years. It's staggering, especially for those of you who are millennials, people who are older, right? Those born before the turn of the century. You might think about this and wonder, like, where did all this come from? Where have I been? But if you happen to be 12 years old, 15 years old, or even older, because the average age of a gamer in the United States today is 35. You'd think that someone at the age of 35 has their lives figured out, that they have more important things to do, that they have a family and kids, and they worry about feeding those kids. They worry about work. They worry about paying their mortgage. You'd think that, right? But no. 35-year-olds, that's the average age. In other words, you've got people in their 40s and 50s who are actively participating in gaming on a daily basis. How much time they spend on that varies from country to country, but that's not the point. The point is that a third of the globe's population are gamers. That's 3.2 billion people around the world, which explains why the industry is just so staggeringly massive. At the beginning of this year, Microsoft announced the acquisition of a gaming behemoth known as Activision Blizzard. Those of you who play Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, right? These kinds of blockbuster games, you're familiar with Activision Blizzard because it always starts with that logo. The acquisition of Activision by Microsoft sent the industry into a spiral. Why? Because it was the biggest acquisition in the tech industry to date. $68.7 billion was invested by Microsoft when they bought out Activision. Activision, some gaming company, $68.7 billion? Compare that to when Google bought out YouTube about 10 years ago. They bought it for $1.6 billion. And at the time, people were like going absolutely crazy. $68.7 billion. Facebook, which is a social media company, announced that it's completely changing itself and transitioning into gaming in a virtual world. They renamed the company into Meta because their focus now is no longer on the social media stuff. It's no longer about messaging. It's no longer about ad revenues in that space. It's about gaming in a virtual world. Now, a lot of you, especially those who are younger, you know more about this than I do. But my point here is this. You know something is important when big money is being invested into it, right? That's usually a very good indication that, hang on a second, this is serious. And although I may be oblivious, I may be asleep, I don't know what's going on around me, but this is something that I need to take very seriously. That's number one. Number two, how do you know this is serious? There is an organization based out of New York. It's called GLAAD. And it's one of the leading advocacy groups for LGBTQI acceptance. In its annual report, which I read about a year and a half ago, and I was reading their most recent annual report just today, it says, and I quote, listen carefully, مَنْ نَامَ لَمْ يُنَمْ عَنْهُ. We're asleep, wallahi we're asleep. But look at what the other side is doing. In their annual report, it says that the gaming industry is one of the, or gaming in general, is one of the biggest media in the world today. And I'm quoting, and one of the biggest opportunities we have today to change hearts and minds. They increased their annual budget, and their annual budget every year is about $100 million. And they get funding from, guess who? Lockheed Martin. They get funding from weapons manufacturers. The same people that make Hellfire missiles are donating to this organization called GLAD. Anyway, I'll leave you to process that. Then they said in their annual report again that they've increased their annual budget that targets gaming companies by 30%. I don't know how many millions of dollars, in order to introduce LGBTQ plus hashtag question mark exclamation point God knows what else into games, into video games. Now you think to yourself, but what would a game character do if a game character has to be trans or has to be this or that? Right? But it makes a big difference. Why? Because it's not just about the game. Anyone who's a serious gamer can attest to that. It isn't about you shooting people on some game console. It's about the lifestyle. It's about the environment. It's about the social, the pop references. It's about the discussions that happen in the background. It's about esports, which is their Olympics. They literally have an Olympics for video games, right? The first one was held, I think, in 2019 in New York or someplace, right? And there were 27,000 people who showed up to those games, where you literally just have people sitting behind screens and playing a video game. This is serious. Why am I saying all of this? Because again, and this will be familiar to all of you parents, you'll get an email and a message and a post and a leaflet and a brochure that says, Black Friday deals, hurry up before you miss out. First of all, chillax. What's wrong with you? Miss out on what? What's going to happen? But see, when that pushes your buttons and the endorphins go completely haywire in your head, you feel the same way. You feel like, I don't want to miss out on this. And it's like, what are you missing out on? 20% discount on this tablet. 15% discount on this laptop, on this gaming console, right? Listen to this hadith. Rasulullah says, أغلق بابك فإن الشيطان لا يفتح بابا مغلقا. Close your door, because shaitan never opens a closed door. What does that mean? It means that, let's say, imagine you have a house that's got a lot of nice furniture, curtains, maybe some valuable possessions, a TV, this, that, or the other. If your door is closed, a thief, a burglar, will most likely not try to force their way into it, because you've just made it more complex. It's harder. They have to pick a lock, they have to break the door, they have to break a window, right? But imagine if you leave your door open by like 2 inches. Any burglar, any thief that walks past your house, they're like easy peasy. They just push the door open and enter and do whatever they want, right? Rasulullah says, close your door. Sallu alayhi wa alih. Salamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. He says, close your doors, because shaitan will never open a closed door. By buying that gaming console, by buying that tablet, by buying into the fantasy that you're doing your children a favor by getting them all of these tools and leaving them prone and open to a whole other world that you have not a single clue about, you've opened your door. You've left your door open. You've left your door open. Do you even know who your kids are talking to when they're playing those games? And there are other people, live individuals that are talking into their heads? Do you know what's happening? Do you know how old that guy is who's talking to your kid? You have no clue. Wallahi, we have no clue. And we trust the industry to self-regulate? that, oh yeah, this is a PG-14, PG-15 game. It's okay, it's fine. My kid's 16 years old. Or this is a G-rated game. How do you trust these ratings? Do you even know who sets these ratings? Do you know based on what parameters? Do you have any idea? People say that children are playing endless hours of video games and they've turned into these mindless zombies. Wallahi, the kids are not the mindless zombies, it's the parents. The kids are not mindless zombies. The kids are simply craving that excitement, that euphoria, that joy, that happiness that they get when they shoot someone and kill them and win and receive the admiration of their friends and their peers. The kids are innocent in all of this. You're the one who needs to be blamed. You're the one who kept that door open. You're the one who opened that door into this whole other world. On a night like this, we talk about parenting because this is one of the biggest challenges we've got, brothers and sisters. If you're buying a house and you sign a loan contract with the bank, usually the bank gives you about 500 pages worth of paperwork to read. Granted, most people never read them, right? But they give you a whole stack of documents that you must agree on. You have to either sign them or leave your initials on them, which means what? It means you've read them, you understand. And maybe you won't care at first because you're excited, you're happy, you got the loan approved, right? But when there is an economic slump, when you're not able to make the payments, that's when the bank comes after you with all of its power. That's when the lawyers and the debt collectors call you and say, hey, remember this clause that you signed? Remember this article? Remember this paragraph? Remember this page? The problem we've got is that we have people who rightly want to get married and have kids and establish a family, which is the right thing to do, no doubt. But you have to sign a 500-page document to get a loan approved. What have you signed? What have you read to have children and to raise them in a proper manner? There is no document, there is no manual, there is nothing, no instructions, nothing. You just have the kids and then hope for the best. Is that how it works? Now, many of you here, I'm guessing, are not married yet. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, what's that got to do with me? Maybe you should talk to my parents. Here's their number. But here's the deal. In order for you to be a successful parent in 10 years' time, it may just be too late even for you to start now. Why? Let me share a hadith with you. Someone came to Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. He said to him, Allah has blessed me with a boy and I have named him Muhammad. Sallu alayhi wa ala. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. The Imam said to him, now that you've named him Muhammad, then don't insult him. Don't beat him. Don't hurt his feelings, right? Why? Because it's beautiful that we have names of the Ahlul Bayt that would ornate our homes and beautify our families. But it's also important that we treat them responsibly, that because I gave my child the name of Fatima, or I gave them the name of Hassan and Hussein and so on, that comes with a responsibility. I can't go around like some of these, again, mindless zombie parents who curse their kids, which is something that's not religiously sanctioned, it's wrong, it's immoral. Imagine what you're teaching them by cursing them, by using vulgar profanities. Is that you trying to be a parent? You think that by cursing them, you're going to turn them into better human beings? What's wrong with you? Again, these are parents who have no clue about parenting. So the Imam says to him, you've chosen a blessed name for him, now treat him as such. Then he says to the Imam, he says, Ya ibn Rasulullah, when my boy is old enough, what vocation, what jobs do I introduce him to? Where does he work? Now, in this day and age, we don't ask that question. Instead, we ask, which school should he go to? Right? And I'll get to that in a little bit. Imagine, this guy just had a boy. And he's already asking Imam al-Sadiq about what job his boy should be introduced to in 10, 15, 20 years' time. In other words, you have to start early. You can't just put it off until they're old enough. You can't put it off until they're like 10 and 12 and 15, because by that time it may very well be too late. Too late. That's the time when they've already been brainwashed. That's the time when they've already been fed all this garbage. That's the time when they've already developed their persona, their character, their habits, their hobbies. They're already serious gamers spending 10 hours a day playing all these games that have been fed all this poison. It's too late at that point. You need to start early on. In fact, before they're born. In fact, before you choose your spouse. Someone came to one of the ulama in the holy city of Mashhad, Ayatollah Mirza Jawad Aghai Tehrani. May Allah bless his soul. He said to him, MashaAllah, you have such wonderful children, such beautiful children. What did you do? He said, do you know how many nights were spent crying in Salatul Layl, in the qunut of Al-Watr in Salatul Layl, so that Allah gave me these children? You think that's just an accident? You think the fact that I have these children is because they simply lived in a good environment, or because I beat them? I've spent my entire life praying and begging Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for children that are good, and that's the result. In other words, prioritize your children's upbringing. Don't treat it as an afterthought. Don't treat it as a secondary thing in your life. That, yeah, when the time comes, I'll try and figure it out. That's not how it works. You need a strategy. You need a very clear vision of who your children are going to be, what they're going to do, what their characters are going to look like. The Quran says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, listen to this carefully, says, فَلْيَنْظُرِ الْإِنسَانُ إِلَىٰ طَعَامِهِ. Man should look at the food that he's consuming. Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam says, Allah isn't talking about physical food, because that everybody looks after. Everybody, at least parents who are responsible, will ensure that it's organic, they'll read the ingredients, it doesn't contain GMOs. If they have a gluten allergy, it doesn't have any gluten. All these things they'll be very, very particular about, right? But if you're so serious about what their bodies are consuming, surely you should be serious about what their minds are consuming, what their souls are consuming. The Imam says, إِلَىٰ عِلْمِهِ مِمَّنْ يَأْخُذُهُ. Allah is saying, look at your food, meaning your knowledge. Where are you taking your knowledge from? Is it from games? Is it from movies? Is it from the Marvel universe? Is it from, where are you getting all this from? You have to start early. SubhanAllah, I was saying to someone that, you know, all these stories about the miracles of the Ahlul Bayt, all these, for lack of a better word, these fantastical tales of them performing miracles, which are found across the Holy Quran as well as the Hadith corpus. The Quran is filled with these kinds of stories. These stories act best when they're given to our children when they're at that age of about 6, 7, 8. Why do you think the Harry Potter franchise is so successful? Over 200 million copies sold to date. Why? Because it's about this fictional world of magic. Because it's so interesting and intriguing. And for a mind that is imaginative, for someone at that age who wants to explore, who wants to imagine things, this book is a godsend. That's what makes it so successful. So share with them traditions of the Ahlul Bayt, stories about their miracles. Share with them things that would connect them to the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt at this level, so that later on they can benefit from the Imams in terms of their morality. They can't take their moral compass from Harry Potter. They can't take it from all of these fictional tales, but they can take them from Amirul Mu'mineen. They can take them from Imam al-Hasan and Imam al-Hussein. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala. And that means you have to start early. Brothers and sisters, children are your biggest investments, and they're a long-term investment. Don't expect it to pay off. Warren Buffett says that my very first stock purchase was at the age of 12. 12. And then he says, had I known any better, I would have done it even earlier. What a stingy, greedy guy. His net worth today is $100 billion, just over $100 billion. And he says, I should have started earlier, because I don't know why. My point is, you start early with your children. Feed them the culture of Imam al-Hussein. If your child from the age of 3, 4 and up grew up in these gatherings, you see, that's why it never distracts me or upsets me when I see children running around in a Husayniyya, in a majlis. It may be a distraction for those listening, but not for me, never. Because I love to see these children in these places. I want them to take in, to absorb all the ambience that screams, Ya Hussein. I want them to familiarize themselves with this. If a child is raised in an environment like this, in an environment where his mother takes him to Dua Nudba every Friday morning, his father takes them to the Aza after the majlis, who are taught that they can help when they hold a majlis at home or in the local Husayniyya. They actually are encouraged to go and help out and volunteer and whatnot. If they grow up in an environment like that, what do you think is going to happen? When they're 15 and 16 and 17, they won't go with every wind. They won't be distracted. Oh, here's a game, here's this, here's that. These games, they take away the attention of our children. They become so addicted to very quick action taking place, right? And then we wonder why they can't sit still and listen to a lecture for 45 minutes. It's because that's how you've wired their brain. You've fried their brain cells, literally. They become impulsive. They become easily agitated. They become angry, right? As a parent, you tell them, go wash your teeth, and they're like, leave me alone. And it's like, what did I do? What did I say? That's the result of these endless hours of being behind these video game consoles, right? All these psychological problems come up. All these emotional problems are created, and then it becomes about nothing but vain life, about distraction, about fun. It's all about fun. It's about gaining pleasure, avoiding pain, as we said. So then, when you talk to them about the creation of the heavens and the earth, to them this is meaningless. When you talk to them about the sacrifice of Imam al-Hussein, they're like, why are people even crying? I mean, what's the big deal? I kill people in my, in my game console for fun, for virtual coins, right? They literally have to drive over people so that they could win this game. I mean, can you imagine the aggression, the anger, the violence that this ingrains within them? God knows, I think it'll take another 10, 20 years before we recognize just how dangerous, how destructive, how corrosive the gaming industry has been. But what I would like to ask you all here tonight, brothers and sisters, is many of us are victim to this. Let's change our way. Let's try to fill their lives with meaningful things. Let's make religion exciting so that they don't have to resort to all of this. And let's put limitations. Let's put rules around all of these. If they want to play a game once a week, that's fine. And I've seen families like this. I've seen families where the parent tells their children that if you want to play for half an hour, for instance, you have to listen to a lecture beforehand, right? And these are strategies that you can employ. These are things that you can do in order to limit, if not completely eliminate, at least limit the dangers that we are faced with today. Why do we talk about parenting on a night like this? Because on a night like this, we remember a child who was one of the greatest icons of humanity. We remember this young boy, لَمَّا يَبْلُغِ الْحُلُمْ. He had yet to reach puberty and physical maturity. And yet, with every word that he uttered on the plains of Karbala, he reminds us that he was a giant above and beyond the greatest of human beings, despite his young age. We remember the orphan of Imam al-Hasan al-Mushtaba. We remember Al-Qasim ibn al-Hasan. On the eve of Ashura, Imam al-Hussein did with his companions what Amir al-Mu'mineen did with his. Remember last night when I said that Amir al-Mu'mineen sometimes shared ilm al-manaya wal-balaya with some of his elite companions, meaning that he would tell them how they're going to die, when they're going to die, by whom they're going to die. On the eve of Ashura, Imam al-Hussein had already filtered his companions. He had sifted the good from the bad. All those who were on shaky ground already left the camp of Imam al-Hussein, and only the best of the best were left, the creme de la creme. And it's then that the Imam shared with them that they're all going to die tomorrow. He described to each of them how they're going to die. He even removed the veil between this world and the next, showing their positions in paradise. After describing what's going to happen, Al-Qasim ibn al-Hasan, as a 13-year-old boy, realized that his uncle didn't say anything about him, even though he said, even my 6-month-old infant is going to be killed. So he gets up from the back and he says, Ya Am, wa ana mimman yuqtal. Am I also going to join that list, that honor list of martyrs tomorrow? You're saying that your 6-month-old infant is going to get killed while I'm alive? How is that? وَأَنَا مِمَّن يُقْتَلْ بِأَبِي أَنْتَ وَأُمِّي يَا أَبَا عَبْدِ اللَّهِ. People usually mention this musibah as the pain and tragedy of Al-Qasim, but I think this is the tragedy of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. What would Imam al-Hussein have to go through as he spoke to his nephew? Imam al-Hussein had to tell him that he's going to die because he asked. But at the same time, how do you break such news to a boy, to a child? How do you tell a child that he is terminal, that he is going to die soon? Instead, Imam al-Hussein asked him a question. Perhaps the reason the Imam asked this question wasn't to test Al-Qasim. He knew his nephew. He raised him himself. Al-Qasim was only 3 years old when his father Imam al-Hasan was martyred. So Imam al-Hussein knew who his nephew was. Instead, he wanted to energize the entire camp of Abu Abdullah. Imagine what happened to Habib ibn Mudahir, to Burayr ibn Khudayr, to Muslim ibn Awsaja, to John the slave, to Aslam, to all of these companions when they heard the response of Qasim. The Imam said to him, كَيْفَ الْمَوْتُ عِنْدَكَ? How do you perceive death? His response is famous. He said, فِيك أحلى من العسل. If I am going to die in your way, Ya Aba Abdullah, then it is sweeter than honey. That's how I perceive death. I want nothing but to die for you. And so, on the day of Ashura, after everyone had been killed, all of the companions, many of the Hashemites, Imam al-Hussein looked to the right and the left. وَلَمْ يَجِدْ إِلَّا مَنْ صَافَحَ التُّرَابُ جَبِينَهُ. He then called out, أَلَا هَلْ مِن نَاصِرٍ يَنْصُرُنَا لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ أَلَا هَلْ مِن ذَابٍ يَذُبُّ عَنْ حَرَمِ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. That's when he heard 2 boys who emerged from the tents calling out, لبيك يا عما لبيك يا عما. Al-Qasim came to his uncle Abu Abdullah and addressed him.
Assalamu alaikum Sayyidi ya Abu Abdullah. عمي يا حسين، جئتك لتأذن لي بالقتال، فإن أبي هو الذي أوصاني بنصرتك، فإن أمي هي التي أوصتني بذلك وألبستني لامة حربي. عماه، لقد ضاق صدري وسئمت الحياة. ألا ترى الأطفال وقد غارت عيونهم من شدة العطش؟ ألا ترى الرضيع وقد جف اللبن في ثدي أمه؟ عماه، والله لا طاقة لي على البقاء في الخيمة وأنا أسمع ندائك واستنصارك. عماه، هذه جبة أبي الحسن، وهذه عمامته، وهذا سيفه، فهل تأذن لي بالقتال؟ فلتك نفسي يا عماه. إن تنكروني فأنا نجل الحسن، سبط النبي المصطفى والمؤتمن. هذا حسين، هذا حسين كالأسير المرتهن، بين أناس لا سقوا صوب المزون. يا حسين،
يا حسين، يا حسين، يا حسين. He came to his uncle asking him for permission to leave. Unlike the others who came to Abu Abdullah and the Imam gave them permission, Ali al-Akbar, the Imam granted him permission. Al-Abbas, the Imam granted him permission. When Al-Qasim came, the Imam refused to give him his permission, saying, "You are the orphan of my brother Abu Muhammad al-Hasan." The Imam simply refused to allow him to go. حتى وقع الغلام على قدمي عمه يقبلهما. Al-Qasim now resorted to begging his uncle. He fell to his feet, kissing them, asking him to let him go and fight for him. Eventually, Abu Abdullah gave him his permission. فَتَعَانَقَا مَلِيًّا. Arbab al-Maqatil say they embrace one another. فَبَكَيَا سَاعَةً حَتَّى غُشِيَ عَلَيْهِمَا. They cried until they both fell unconscious. I have yet to see in the Maqtal anywhere that Imam al-Hussein fell unconscious except on this occasion. غُشِيَ عليهما. Then they regained consciousness. Imam al-Hussein said to him, "Now that you're going, my dear nephew, allow me to prepare you for battle." How do you prepare a young child to go and face a torrent, an army of 30,000 men? The helmet is too small for him. The shield is too big for him. So Abu Abdullah took his turban off, which was the turban of Rasulullah. He cut it into two halves. He then took one half. He cut that into another two halves. He then took one part and wrapped it around the boy's back. He then took the other and wrapped it around his head. Imagine you see a young boy with a turban on their head. The turban of Rasulullah, no less. He then said to him, "Go ala barakatillah."
أجرك الله يا صاحب الزمان. فهرول الغلام نحو المعركة. He didn't just go, not one step forward, one step backward. He ran towards the enemy lines. When he got there, some said, who is this young boy fighting with valor and courage? Didn't we already kill Ali al-Akbar? Haven't we killed all of Hussein's children? Who is this young boy? That's when he introduced himself. إن تنكروني فأنا نجل الحسن. If you don't recognize me, I am the son of Hassan. I am my father's gift to my uncle Hussein. I am my father's contribution to Ashura. He fought with valor, he fought with courage, until a wicked man standing next to Humayd ibn Muslim, he said, علي آثام العرب إن لم أثكل عمه به. May the sins of the Arabs rest on my shoulder if I don't make his uncle grieve over him. He said to him, isn't it enough that he is surrounded by all these animals? He said, no, I will be the one to kill him. He approached Al-Qasim ibn al-Hasan. He struck him with his sword, such that Qasim cried out, Ammi adrikni ya Amma. All the others, when they said their salams to Abu Abdullah, they simply said Assalamu alaik. But Al-Qasim asked the Imam to save him. He said, uncle, save me. Imagine how Abu Abdullah went to him. فجاءه كالصقر المنقض على فريسته, like an eagle catching its prey. When Imam al-Hussein reached them, there was a skirmish, there was an encounter. فلما انجلت الغبرة وإذا بالغلام يشخص برجله. He was shaking his feet in the ground. يقول عمي يقول يا جاسم ايش بيدي. يقول يا جاسم ايش بيدي. يا ريت السيف قبلك حاز وريدي. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. With these broken hearts and these tearful eyes, and in honor of Al-Qasim ibn al-Hasan, I want you to make this dua tonight, inshaAllah. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج. اللهم عجل. اللهم اجعلنا من أصحابه وأعوانه والمستشهدين بين يديه ومقوية سلطانه. اللهم ارزقنا في الدنيا زيارة الحسين وفي الآخرة شفاعة الحسين. اللهم أرض إمام زماننا عنا. اللهم أصلح كل فاسد من أمور المسلمين. اللهم احفظ واحرس واهد شبابنا. اللهم ثبتنا على ولاية أمير المؤمنين. اللهم وفقنا لمراضيك وجنبنا معاصيك. اللهم وارحم موتانا ومن مات على الإيمان والعلماء والصالحين والشهداء ومن لا يذكرهم ذاكر من شيعة أمير المؤمنين إلى أرواحهم نهدي ثواب المجلس وثواب سورة المباركة الفاتحة مع الصلوات.
يا الله أعظم الله أجوركم شباب، بارك الله بكم. يا مهدي يا مهدي يا مهدي يا مهدي يا رب الزهراء بحق الزهراء يا رب الزهراء بحق الزهراء اشفي صدر الزهراء بظهور الحجة اشفي صدر الزهراء بظهور الحجة يا مهدي. ما شاء الله يا مهدي يا رب الحسين يا رب الحسين بحق الحسين يا رب الحسين بحق الحسين اشفي صدر الحسين بظهور الحجة اشفي صدر الحسين بظهور الحجة يا مهدي يا مهدي يا مهدي يا مهدي أحن عليك والناقة حنت لي وظهر مصيبتك يا ابني حنت لي الوادم من دمى نحرك حنت لي شيبي ونصبت بعرسك عزية يناثر على المتن شعرك والجعود اخبرك بالقلب سهمك والجعود والجعود اظل معلوم يا جاسم ولا جعود انا عليك كل صبح ومسي يا يما يا يما هل شاب قلبي بمشعل اللوعات هل شاب وقبل حين سواد الراس هل شاب أنا ما شافت عيوني مثل الشاب زفاف دموع وسهام ومنية يا يم يا زفاف دموع وسهام يا ومنية جسام يا ابن الحسن رملتي نادي بشجن. جسام يا ابن الحسن رملتي نادي بشجن. يا ظنوتي ويا هيبتي يوم الشرف هاليوم. يا ظنوتي ويا هيبتي يوم الشرف هاليوم. جسام يا ابن الحسن رملتي نادي بشجن. جسام يا ابن الحسن رملتي نادي بشجن. يا ظنوتي ويا هيبتي يوم الشرف هاليوم. يا ظنوتي ويا هيبتي يوم الشرف هاليوم. رملة يا جسام نادت ردتك الوقت الشدد. رملة يا جسام نادت ردتك الوقت الشدد. يبقى هذا اليوم يومك وادري ما تخلف وعد. وادري ما تخلف وعد. رملة يا جسام نادت ردتك الوقت الشدد. يا ابني هذا اليوم يومك وادري ما تخلف وعد. وادري ما تخلف وعد. لما حسينك تنصره للحسن توفي العهد. لما حسينك تنصره للحسن توفي العهد. مو مهم يسيل دمك والمهم المعتقد. والمهم المعتقد. يا وليدي شينهي الدماء ترخص لي بين فاطمة. يا وليدي شينهي الدماء ترخص لي بين فاطمة. بكفتي خور طول العمر لما تضحي دموم. بكفتي خور طول العمر لما تضحي دموم. جسام يا ابن الحسن رملتي نادي بشجن. جسام يا ابن الحسن رملتي نادي بشجن. يا ظنوتي ويا هيبتي يوم الشرف هاليوم. يا ظنوتي ويا هيبتي يوم الشرف. لبس درعه واخذ سيفه وراح لحسين بفخر. وراح لحسين بفخر. شاد الخضرة على راسه كان عباس القمر. كان عباس القمر. نادى ارخصني يا عمي اردذل هاي البشر. اردذل هاي البشر. نادى ارخصني يا عمي اردذل هاي البشر. خلى سطر للملاحم بالطفوف اروع صور. بالطفوف اروع صور. بالطفوف اروع صور. بالزود والمرجله تشهد تظل كربلة. بالزود والمرجله تشهد تظل كربلة. يا بن علي وامي الي صاحت يا جاسم قوم. يا بن علي وامي الي صاحت يا جاسم قوم. يا ظنوتي ويا هيبتي يوم الشرف هاليوم. من برز للقوم جاسم صاحب الحمى وعلن، صاحب الحمى وعلن، لن هتف ان تنكروني فأنا نجل الحسن، فأنا نجل الحسن. من برز للقوم جاسم صاح بالحمى وعلن، لن هتف ان تنكروني فأنا نجل الحسن، فأنا نجل الحسن. بالعساكر ظل ينادي احنا وين احنا الزمن، وبالعساكر ظل ينادي احنا وينتم والزمان، والخلود نشوفه باكر يا ترى يصبح لمن، يا ترى يصبح لمن. رغم الهجور والحرب نتخلد بكل قلب، رغم الهجور والحرب نتخلد بكل قلب. انتم خدور وانا افتخر راح نذكرها اليوم، انتم خدور وانا افتخر راح نذكر للدوم. يا ظنوتي ويا هيبتي يوم الشرف هاليوم، يوم الشرف. يا رغم ما نال الشهادة وحقق بدم النصر، لكن على فراق الحب قلب رمل المنكسر. ويل يا فقده وغيابه هالدمر كان الصبر، ويل يا فقده وغيابه هالدمر كان الصبر. كان عند امه وجوده اغلى من كل العمر، اغلى من كل العمر. وجه الفجور شوفته ما تنحمل فارقته، وجه الفجور شوفته ما تنحمل فارقته. أمه بحزن ظلت توني يا وليدي، يا مظلوم يا الله، يا من لا يقال لسواك يا الله. عجل لوليك الظهور والفرج والنصر والعافية، واجعلنا من أنصاره وأعوانه ومن المستشهدين بين يديه. اللهم وفقنا لمراضيك، جنبنا معاصيك، لا تخرجنا من هذا المجلس إلا بقضاء الحوائج وشفاء المرضى يا الله. إلى موتاكم وموتى المؤسسين، وإلى العلماء والشهداء وخدمة الحسين، بلغ اللهم الجميع الثواب المباركة. الفاتحة مع الصلوات.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا خيرة الله وابن خيرته، السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين وابن سيد الوصيين، السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور. السلام عليك وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار. يا أبا عبد الله، لقد عظمت الرزية وجلت وعظمت المصيبة بك علينا وعلى جميع أهل الإسلام، وجلت وعظمت مصيبتك في السماوات على جميع أهل السماوات. فلعن الله أمة أسست أساس الظلم والجور عليكم أهل البيت، ولعن الله أمة دفعتكم عن مقامكم وأزالتكم عن مراتبكم التي رتبكم الله فيها، ولعن الله أمة قتلتكم، ولعن الله الممهدين لهم بالتمكين من قتالكم. برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم ومن أشياعهم وأتباعهم وأوليائهم. يا أبا عبد الله، إني سلم لمن سالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم إلى يوم القيامة. ولعن الله آل زياد وآل مروان، ولعن الله بني أمية قاطبة، ولعن الله ابن مرجانة، ولعن الله عمر بن سعد، ولعن الله شمرا، ولعن الله أمة أسرجت وألجمت وتنقبت لقتالك. بأبي أنت وأمي، لقد عظم مصائبك، فأسأل الله الذي أكرم مقامك وأكرمني بك أن يرزقني طلب ثارك مع إمام منصور من أهل بيت محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم اجعلني عندك وجيها بالحسين عليه السلام في الدنيا والآخرة. يا أبا عبد الله، إني أتقرب إلى الله وإلى رسوله وإلى أمير المؤمنين وإلى فاطمة وإلى الحسن وإليك بمضالاتك وبالبراءة ممن قاتلك ونسب لك الحرب، وبالبراءة ممن أسس أساس الظلم والجور عليكم. وأبرأ إلى الله وإلى رسوله ممن أسس أساس ذلك وبنى عليه بنيانا وجرى في ظلمه وجوره عليكم وعلى أشيائكم. برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم، وتقرب إلى الله ثم إليكم بمضالاتكم ومضالاة وليكم، وبالبراءة من أعدائكم والناصبين لكم الحرب، وبالبراءة من أشيائهم وأتباعهم. إني سلم لمن سالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم وولي لمن والاكم وعدو لمن عاداكم. فأسأل الله الذي أكرمني بمعرفتكم ومعرفة أوليائكم ورزقني البراءة من أعدائكم أن يجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة، وأن يثبت لي عندكم قدم صدق في الدنيا والآخرة، وأسأله أن يبلغني المقام المحمود لكم عند الله، وأن يرزقني طلب ثاري مع إمام هدى ظاهر ناطق بالحق منكم. وأسأل الله بحقكم وبالشأن الذي لكم عنده أن يعطيني بمصابي بكم أفضل ما يعطي مصابا بمصيبته، مصيبة ما أعظمها وأعظم رزيتها في الإسلام وفي جميع السماوات والأرض. اللهم اجعلني في مقامي هذا ممن تناله منك صلوات ورحمة ومغفرة. اللهم اجعل محياي محيا محمد وآل محمد، ومماتي ممات محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إن هذا يوم تبركت به بنو أمية وابن آكلة الأكباد، اللعين ابن اللعين على لسانك ولسان نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله، في كل موطن وموقف وقف فيه نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم لعن أبا سفيان ومعاوية ويزيد بن معاوية، عليهم منك اللعنة أبد العابدين. وهذا يوم فرحت به آل زياد وآل مروان بقتلهم الحسين صلوات الله عليه. اللهم فضاعف عليهم اللعن منك والعذاب الأليم. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك في هذا اليوم وفي موقفي هذا وأيام حياتي بالبراءة منهم واللعنة عليهم وبالموالاة لنبيك وآل نبيك عليه وعليهم السلام. اللهم لعن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد، وآخر تابع له على ذلك. اللهم لعن العصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله. اللهم لعنهم جميعا. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. اللهم خص أنت أول ظالم باللعن مني، وابدأ به أولا، ثم العن الثاني والثالث والرابع. اللهم العن يزيد خامسا، والعن عبيد الله بن زياد وابن مرجانة وعمر بن سعد وشمرة وآل أبي سفيان وآل زياد وآل مروان إلى يوم القيامة. اللهم لك الحمد حمد الشاكرين لك على مصابه. الحمد لله على عظيم رزيتي. اللهم ارزقني شفاعة الحسين يوم الورود، وثبتني قدم صدق عندك مع الحسين وأصحاب الحسين الذين بذلوا مهجهم دون الحسين عليه السلام.